Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Up on the main stage, the mysterious imperial tutor, Zhu Zi, Jing Hongchen, and all the other Sun Moon Empire officials all stood up. There was no lack of strong soul masters among them. However, it was their first time seeing something like this. Fusion skill. No, it can't be. This doesn't look like a fusion skill. How can there be so many changes in a fusion skill? Furthermore, the Sun Moon Empire had done a thorough investigation of Huo Yuhao and Wang Donga. There weren't any records of such a transformation being used by them. When the purplish gold figure appeared, the weather changed. The raging storms and rain seemed to stop. The entire stage was illuminated by the purplish gold light. What exactly was this? The bone dragon finally lifted his head again. When everyone else saw the stage shining with golden and silver lights earlier, he had seen the silver eye shining brightly when Huo Yuhao's body-soul underwent its second awakening. Huo Yuhao's golden vertical eye turned into a silver one. The golden and silver lights had turned into an unprecedentedly powerful spiritual shock that had struck him. A strong sense of crisis forced Yang Feng to gather his soul power around his head. Even so, he still experienced a throbbing dizziness after being struck. Even his spiritual sea started to crack, and he lost control of his body temporarily. Eventually, he collapsed onto the stage. Just as he was struggling and managed to stay clear-headed for a moment, he saw something very strange, or rather, miraculous. Is this another illusion? Yang Feng struggled to stand up. As he roared, he tried to bear the intense pain that followed the spiritual shock. His wings opened, and he started to fly again. The purplish gold figure also moved at this moment. He was extremely quick. He reached an unbelievable speed in just a second. However, the figure didn't charge towards Yang Feng, but towards the side. Xiao Xiao dismantled her cauldron formation, at the same time, and somersaulted backward in the air. The purplish gold figure was like a bolt of purplish gold lightning that suddenly flashed in the air. It swept past the Skeleton King. A purplish gold palm was pressed against the Skeleton King, who was completely clueless about what was going on. A purplish gold projection flashed before disappearing. The Skeleton King's head exploded with a quiet boom. A white light also shot into his crushed head. Just as it was rising, the spirit fire that attempted to escape was dissipated by the purifying white light. A tragic scream resonated across the entire stage. The Skeleton King collapsed to the ground. His black bones couldn't handle it anymore, and were completely crushed. Yang Feng finally panicked. By the time he saw the purplish gold figure again, the Skeleton King was already dead. Even though the Skeleton King was restrained by the three-lived soul crush cauldron earlier, this sudden destructiveness was too frightening. Even his spirit fire didn't escape, and he was killed so easily. The eyes of the purplish gold figure were still shut, and he remained in mid-air. His dragon wings were open, and the purplish gold glow, as well as the halo beneath his feet, was still flashing gently. The sound of the wind stopped, while the rain changed. The torrential rain seemed to be guided by an invisible force, and gathered towards the center of the stage. The rainwater followed the circular opening at the top of the barriers and flowed down. It was like a waterfall had appeared above the stage. As the rainwater reached less than 200 meters from the ground, it began falling at a considerably slower rate. The rainwater turned into falling snow, and started to engulf the entire stage. He can manipulate the weather. Isn't this something only a titled dueler can do? After being astonished several times, Yang Feng felt as if there were a mountain on his chest. He knew he couldn't wait anymore. The purplish gold figure was like an immortal that had descended upon the mortal world. He used one palm strike to kill the Skeleton King, casting a huge shadow over the back of his mind. As the weather changed, Yang Feng also knew that his time was almost up. The bone dragon lifted his head to the sky and roared. The icy blue light around its body rose once again. The falling snowflakes actually helped to strengthen him. The bone dragon was a creature of evil and ice. At this moment, Yang Feng's body shone brightly with icy blue light that burned like fire. His bone dragon body expanded once again, growing by several meters. After that, he charged towards the purplish gold figure with an unstoppable momentum. It was do or die. He exploited the opportunity, before his opponent unleashed all his strength to push for victory. The purplish gold figure seemed as if he didn't care. He lifted his right hand and pointed his index finger towards the sky. Suddenly, the falling snowflakes danced and converted into a huge icy whirlpool descending from the sky. The temperature on the stage fell significantly, and even the yellowish barriers started to turn white. The Soul Masters maintaining the barriers were under great pressure. It felt like the extreme chill could seep into their bodies through the barriers. What kind of force is this? Is he a titled dueler? Xingzhong was already at a loss for words. The falling temperature caused him to feel cold, even with his cultivation. Even if someone allowed him to end the fight right now, he would be very unwilling to do so. He knew that he could be hurt if he just ended it like this. Is this really achievable by someone who's not even 20 years old? The bone dragon took only a second to arrive in front of the purplish gold figure. The purplish gold figure lifted his left arm and mimicked a pushing action. The wings behind his back suddenly changed color. One side turned white, while the other became shiny and transparent. There was a captivating light projection above each of the wings. They looked like two elegant ladies. Rings of light started to rise from the purplish gold figure's feet. The first halo was blood red, and carried 4 streaks of gold. The second to 5th halos were all orange gold. The 5th halo flashed. The bone dragon stopped in front of the pushing left palm, and couldn't advance any further. The icy blue flames that were burning on his body seemed to meet with an obstacle, too. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't advance. The stage suddenly lit up with a patch of blinding light. However, it wasn't gold and silver this time. Rather, it was white and jade green. Those who were prepared this time saw everything clearly. The white and azure green light came from the purplish gold figure's wings. They appeared as 2 captivating projections that merged together. Instantly, they spread from the head of the bone dragon all the way to his tail. The 2 lights seemed to flash across his entire body in an instant. The patch of blinding light disappeared. The spinning snowflakes above the stage also stopped, and slowly stopped descending altogether. Then they started rising instead. They changed into ice blades, shooting into the sky. The falling rain was slashed apart by these blades and turned into snow. Eventually, it changed into a huge icy tornado that whirled its way into the sky. Xingzhong was in daze as he watched all this. His pupils shrank. Just as the white and azure green lights flashed, he felt goosebumps all across his body. Even he wasn't sure what he would do if he faced such an attack. What kind of strength is that? 8 rings. The attack must at least be at the level of an 8-ringed soul dueler. No wonder he was afraid, even though he was a class 9 soul engineer. After all, he didn't possess the fighting strength of a true titled dueler. How is this possible? Huo Yuhao and Wang Donga have 5 and 6 rings respectively. Their combined strength is actually able to reach an 8-ringed level. The bone dragon opened its mouth and continued to drift in front of the purplish gold left palm. His voice was becoming more and more coarse. Can you tell me the name of this soul skill? Huo Yuhao's indifferent and cold voice sounded out. It's called the Pride of the Ice and Snow Empresses. Thanks. Yang Feng's voice suddenly sounded huskier. In the next instant, his body seemed to turn brighter. Following this, his bones started to crack. After a series of piercing cracks, his bones were crushed. When his crushed bones fell to the ground, they turned to powder. A ball of icy blue light shone for a short while around the bone dragon's head before it disappeared. The Pride of the Ice and Snow Empress didn't just destroy his body, it destroyed his soul, too. Yang Feng was completely obliterated. The Tang sect versus the Holy Ghost sect. Of the 4 disciples from the Holy Ghost sect that had competed, all 4 were killed. They were annihilated. On the main stage, the mysterious imperial tutor suddenly clenched his fist extremely tightly. A very unstable and dangerous aura was exuded from his body. He was like a volcano that could erupt at any time. Jing Hongchen took a step forward and blocked Xu Tianran, protecting both him and Zhu Zi. A fiery red glow shone on his chest. Although Jing Hongchen hadn't fought this imperial tutor before, he knew how scary he was. Once he erupted, the entire main stage would turn into hell. Jing Hongchen wasn't the only one who sensed the dangerous aura. There were 7 or 8 people who quickly rushed in front of Xu Tianran and protected him as well. There was also another person beside the imperial tutor. It was a lady completely decked out in black robes. Founder, please calm down. The imperial tutor slowly retracted his dangerous aura, and his cold and creepy voice resonated from underneath his veil. Bloody Tang sect. How dare they kill my disciples? I'll let them have a taste of what it's like to have their souls burned and be skinned to the bones. How could his heart not ache? These disciples who represented the Holy Ghost Church weren't even 20 years old yet, but they were all elites. Yang Feng was even his inheriting disciple. He had high hopes for Yang Feng, but now had he died just like that under Huo Yuhao and Wang Dong's hands. No matter how cold he was still heartbroken right now. He almost lost his cool. Imperial tutor, please calm down. I promise you that I'll hand them over to you and you can do whatever you want with them. Shu Qianran recovered after a momentary shock. He promised the Imperial tutor from safely behind his subjects. Your Highness, you don't have to go to so much trouble. I'll deal with these small fries myself, I'll send people to catch them. After he finished speaking, he turned around and walked away. As he walked off the stage, he blurred and turned into a streak of black light before disappearing. The lady in black said to Shu Qianran, Your Highness, please understand how the Imperial tutor feels. If he was being disrespectful, I'd like to apologize on his behalf. No worries, Shu Qianran smiled in reply, as if he wasn't bothered at all. The lady in black nodded at Shu Qianran. After that, she also jumped up and turned into a streak of black light, chasing after the Imperial tutor. Jing Hongchen looked a little dismal as he said, Your Highness, the Holy Ghost Church is too arrogant. How dare they act like this in front of you? Shu Qianran maintained his composure and said, Hallmaster Hongchen, watch your words. Jing Hongchen was slightly stunned, and he grunted in anger. However, he didn't continue. He understood a little about the Holy Ghost Church. He knew that there was someone so strong in the church, that even the illustrious Virtue Hall couldn't afford to offend them. The purplish gold figure finally landed at this point. His icy white and azure green wings regained their purplish gold color. They slowly closed up behind him. A strong purplish gold light suddenly separated from his body, and two golden figures appeared in front of and behind him. The light dispersed and changed into a strong glow that engulfed all three figures. As the glow distorted, Huo Yuhao and Wang Dong reappeared on the stage. Wang Dong's figure flashed, and she moved to grab Huo Yuhao. She prevented him from falling, as he couldn't stand straight with his legs. Huo Yuhao was a little pale, but he was in good spirits. There was a steady look in his eyes, and he seemed resilient. He clenched both of his fists tightly. He couldn't hide his excitement. Donga, we've won. Huo Yuhao said with real emotion. Wang Donga nodded lightly and replied, yes. We've won. There was a complicated look in her beautiful eyes at this moment. She had always believed that she wasn't that much worse than Huo Yuhao in many different aspects. But after today's battle, she finally understood that Huo Yuhao was already a class above her in arrangement and delegation, without discussing fighting strength. He lived up to his reputation as a proper control-type soul master. They were 6 against 4 in this group battle, but there was an enormous rift between their overall prowess. All 4 of their opponents were evil soul masters who were at least soul emperors, and their opponents also had Yang Feng, who possessed a formidable bone dragon martial soul, and who was also a soul sage. Every single one of them possessed the strength to challenge someone one rank above them. They had managed to defeat their opponents in the end despite these circumstances. These evil soul masters had had a long and bright, or dark, future ahead of them, but every single one of them perished at their hands. How incredible was that? Huo Yuhao seemed to have been in control from the moment Bei fought his first duel to the moment when they concluded the group battle. Every time they were in a dire circumstance, or when they were about to be beaten back, Huo Yuhao would flip another one of his trump cards, so that they could turn the tables back around. This had happened again and again all the way until the last moment, when they had eliminated their opponents with an all-out attack and eventually clinched the win. Wang Donga only had pride in her eyes, as she hugged and supported Huo Yuhao. Thysis, my man, my man. Huo Yuhao closed his eyes once more as he leaned against Wang Donga's body and took in her warmth and fragrance. His heart was surging like a volcanic eruption, and he felt as if his spiritual power was sublimating once more in this moment. There was a mystical feeling bouncing about at the bottom of his heart. He didn't know that Wang Donga was feeling proud of him. The entire battle played out rapidly over and over again in his head. The first merit belonged to Bei in today's victory. He was heinously wounded to the brink of death, which was the price he had paid for taking care of 2 evil soul masters and reaching out to Tang, who had been controlled and brainwashed by the evil soul masters. Judging from Tang Y's reaction, Bei's words had been successful. At the very least, Tang Yue had reacted, and her emotions had begun to change because of his words. This proved that the Holy Ghost Church's hold over Tang Yue wasn't complete, and this meant they had forged a path for them to bring Tang Yue back into the fold in the future. The group fight came afterwards. All four of the evil soul masters they had faced were very powerful, so he had chosen Yu as their point of entry when the battle first begun. This choice was exceptionally important, because they would only have the confidence to eliminate their weakest opponent within a short period of time, by ganging up on him to weaken their adversary's overall strength. Xu Sanxi's contribution was the most substantial one to that end. He had dived deep behind enemy lines so that he could create an opportunity for his teammates, before transporting him and Wang Donga so that the group battle could officially commence. Huo Yuhao had delegated his companions' abilities one by one. Xiao Xiao had sealed their second strongest opponent, the Skeleton King, so that they could shave their opponent's strength from 3 to 2 people, and the battle could be simplified even further. However, he hadn't expected Yang Feng to be so powerful, and he had to reveal one trump card after another to achieve victory in the end. The snowless glacier used together with his ice explosion was one of his strongest moves. This combination was so formidable that he had astonished the Dragon Emperor Doluo when he used it against him back then. Huo Yuhao used the same move against Lu Gingging, the abomination, and this had been imperative to their battle. It seemed as if defeating Yang Feng in the end was part of his plan, but he had borne a heavy burden to do so. He had revealed 5 different trump cards to finally take down Yang Feng. Huo Yuhao had basically possessed his body-soul's second awakening ever since he returned from the Icefire Yin-Yang well in the setting sun forest, but he had always kept it hidden. This was the first trump card that he had used against Yang Feng. His second trump card was his Light of Destiny and his Destiny Gaze. Huo Yuhao rarely used this ability, and it seemed like something that didn't possess any offensive or defensive capabilities on the surface, but Huo Yuhao knew that this ability could turn the tides in battle. This ability focused on lowering his opponent's luck and increasing his own. If he hadn't used his Destiny Gaze, dealing with Yang Feng's assault afterwards and using the rest of his trump cards wouldn't have been so smooth. The spiritual shock that was used with his Eye of Destiny was so effective, because of his Destiny Gaze. His third trump card that came afterwards was even more important. His next trump card was his purplish golden projection. Huo Yuhao only went through with this attempt after making brave and non-conservative judgments. Furthermore, this was their first time using this, and it could possibly be their last. This was the most important trump card that had enabled them to defeat Yang Feng in the end. He hadn't created any new martial soul fusion skills with Wang Di Noga when the 2 golden projections merged together. The reason was because it wasn't just the 2 of them fusing together, there was someone else. Yes, there was a third person besides the 2 of them. The third person was Wang Qiu'er. This was similar to how he had discreetly helped Wang Qiu'er against her powerful opponents. This time, Wang Qiu'er was the one who had lent them a hand, and he had used imitation to accomplish this feat. Wang Qiu'er had actually been beside them since the moment they got on the competition stage. She had been with them all the way, until the entire round was over. Huo Yuhao had communicated with Wang Donga and Wang Qiu'er through his spiritual detection, at the most crucial moment, and he went through with something that was unprecedented for them. His Eye of Destiny had been evolving continuously as he became stronger. This was especially so when Huo Yuhao obtained his body-soul's second awakening, which had evolved his Eye of Destiny to an exceptionally powerful level and given him even stronger abilities. The ability he'd used today was called Fate Conversion. Fate Conversion allowed him to lower his opponent's luck and raise his at the same time. Huo Yuhao could absorb his opponent's luck while lowering it to further boost his own at the same time. Huo Yuhao had tried something new under such circumstances, a 3-in-1 martial soul fusion skill. Huo Yuhao, Wang Donga, and Wang Qiu'er were all capable of undergoing martial soul fusions. Furthermore, their fusion had an almost 100% compatibility. Therefore, he made a courageous guess. If one straight line was parallel to 2 other lines at the same time, then the other 2 lines would still be parallel to each other. In other words, all 3 straight lines would be parallel to one another. Since I can fuse with either one of them, why can't the 3 of us fuse together? Fusion skills had always been a process of sublimating one's abilities. There had been more than one instance of 3-in-1 martial soul fusion skills in the history of Soul Masters. This had happened before within Shrek Academy. 10,000 years ago, Shrek Academy's forefathers Dean Flanders, Yu Xiaogang, and Liu Erlong used a 3-in-1 fusion skill to summon the formidable golden holy dragon. Yu Xiaogang was the dragon god Doluo, Mu Ian, and Beibei's mutated blue lightning tyrant dragon's ancestor. If the people who came before me could do that, can I do the same with my increased luck? Huo Yuhao only took a few seconds to contemplate this question. Yang Feng was simply too powerful, far more so than he had initially expected. Huo Yuhao had prepared other trump cards against him, but he had realized in that moment that the trump cards that he had prepared beforehand didn't seem like they would be enough. How did Yang Feng accidentally kill Lu Gingging? That was Huo Yuhao's fourth trump card, Spiritual Interference Domain. Yes, it was a domain. Spiritual interference wasn't as valuable before, but it was a pity to let it go. Huo Yuhao's spiritual power had gotten stronger as he had, and that allowed his spiritual interference to be used together with his imitation. This gave rise to his spiritual interference domain. Huo Yuhao could change someone's vision and senses within a certain range with spiritual interference and imitation, so that his opponent would be enmeshed in his confusion and deceit. Yang Feng was extremely powerful, but he was still tricked into thinking that Lu Gingging was his enemy, and he ended up lashing out and killing his own teammate. It was clear how powerful this ability was. Huo Yuhao hadn't put everything he had into this domain, because he had to leave something for his 3-in-1 fusion skill. Otherwise, with his current abilities and his body-soul's second awakening, he would still be able to use his spiritual interference domain to ensure that his entire team could return safely. Reality proved that Huo Yuhao's courageous hypothesis worked. Under immense pressure from their enemies, Wang Donga and Wang Qiu'er set aside their differences and opinions so that all three of them could align themselves together. They managed to complete their unrivaled and magnificent fusion under Huo Yuhao's forceful guidance. Huo Yuhao himself didn't expect that their fusion would be so different after it had been completed. They were set for victory once he showed his fourth trump card. The heavy downpour was enormously beneficial for Huo Yuhao, who possessed ultimate ice. His strength climbed exponentially under such circumstances. Their 3-in-1 fusion skill also raised his control over ice to another level. Wang Donga's element of light and her clear sky hammer, Wang Qiu'er's strength, and Huo Yuhao's spiritual power and ultimate ice were all thrown into the same pot. How powerful was that? Huo Yuhao thought of an appropriate name in an instant. Huo Yuhao was the one controlling this 3-in-1 fusion skill, so he hadn't channeled his own abilities into it. Instead, he drew upon Wang Donga and Wang Qiu'er's abilities. He called it the Purple and Gold Draconic Butterfly Transformation. This was a fusion skill superior, even to the solitary dance amidst the frost, raiment of light. Huo Yuhao finally revealed his last trump card, when they were using the Purple Golden Butterfly Dragon Transformation. This trump card was also the most important reason why he was confident that they could clinch this victory through the group battle. Not long before this, Huo Yuhao had realized something very fortunate had happened to him. The Ice Empress had awoken. The Ice Empress had been in hibernation, because she had expended too much of her power when she fused with the Snow Empress back then, but now she was finally awake. The Ice Empress waking up had finally allowed Huo Yuhao to master his fourth soul ring's last ability, which came about after his second martial soul, the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion, merged with the Snow Empress Spirit. His second martial soul was the Ice Empress, but 4 of his 5 soul rings originated from the Snow Empress Spirit. The 3 skills that had been bestowed upon him were the Unparalleled Chill, Empress Sword, the Snowless Glacier, and the Snowy Dance of the Brilliant Sun. Of the 3 powerful soul skills, the Snowy Dance of the Brilliant Sun fused with the domain of perpetual ice that came with Huo Yuhao's Ice Empress skeleton, and that formed his first domain, the Snowy Dance of Ultimate Ice. However, the Snowy Dance of Perpetual Ice didn't distinguish between friend and foe. Huo Yuhao's current physical state, and his restricted movement, made it hard for him to control it. This was the main reason why he hadn't used it in the tournament's previous rounds. Huo Yuhao had never used his 5th and last soul ring before, the same orange-golden soul ring that came from the Ice Empress. Before this, he had no idea what he had to do to activate his 5th soul ring. But not too long ago, the Ice Empress woke up, because Huo Yuhao had continually absorbed the ultimate ice origin energy of heaven and earth, and only then did Huo Yuhao learn that the Snow Empress last soul skill had to be fused with the Ice Empress powers before it could be used. This was a powerful soul skill that surpassed even his Empress Chill. Pride of the Ice and Snow Empresses. Huo Yuhao couldn't use this mighty soul skill with his current soul power, and he could only barely make it work when he was using the Raiment of Light with Wang Donga. But after completing the Purple Golden Butterfly Dragon Transformation, he managed to unleash Pride of the Ice and Snow Empresses, and he was even able to maximize its power at their current cultivation ranks. He had even completely eradicated Yang Feng's incredibly tough skeletal dragon true body. Even Wang Donge was astonished at the number of trump cards that he had. Huo Yuhao was in total control of their victory in the group battle. Of course, Wang Qiu'er was discreetly helping them from the shadows. The Tang sect had won. They'd defeated the Holy Ghost sect, which had possessed 7 formidable evil soul masters. Furthermore, 6 of the Holy Ghost sect's elite youngsters were killed, with the lone exception of Tang Ya. This was undoubtedly a huge blow for the Holy Ghost Church, which was backing the Holy Ghost sect. The skeletal dragon was gone, so Jiang Nan broke out of her prison. The Skeleton King was dead, and so Xiao Xiao was back on the competition stage once more. With Wang Donge's support, Huo Yuhao used his control over ice to melt the ice on Hikaitu and Shusanshi's bodies. Every single one of them was exhausted and spent from everything they had given in this match. However, their eyes were sparkling as they got back together on the competition stage, and only pride could be seen in their eyes. This was a pride and arrogance that belonged to the Tang sect and Shrek Academy at the same time. The 6 of them placed their hands together in mid-air. Huo Yuhao raised his head towards the sky and hollered, "Tang sect! Tang sect! Tang sect! Tang sect!" They shouted as loudly as they could. Yes, this glory belonged to the Tang sect. They had defeated evil, and justice and righteousness were always bound to win. In this moment, the competition stage and the entire Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament belonged to the Tang sect. The audience was shaken by the Tang sect's aura and the atmosphere they were creating, and some people unwittingly began to chant along with the Tang sect's voices, to the point where the organizing committee finally recovered from their astonishment and immediately escorted the Tang sect's team off the competition stage. But the audience was reluctant to leave, and the spectacular and dazzling scenes replayed again and again in their minds. The Tang sect's name had been deeply imprinted in their minds. It was from this moment that the Tang sect's reputation resonated across the entire continent. Inside the resting area, the scorpion tiger Doluo worked hard on Tang Ya. Her eyes had become cold and icy once more, but when she heard the Tang sect's torrential exclamations, the confusion and vacancy in her eyes seemed to crack a little more, and another dash of clarity filled the gap. A thoughtful look flickered once in her eyes, as she watched the people on the competition stage. The mysterious black-robed lady sitting beside her raised her head slightly, and a thick scorching aura emanated faintly from her body. This thickness was filled with limitless hostility and murderous intent. An elderly man smiled faintly in the spectators' grandstand as he muttered under his breath, "You had foresight, Elder Mu. He is the ultimate soldier that the Shrek Academy has produced, and has finally grown up after the ordeal that he went through the last time. When he can get back up on his feet, Shrek Academy will possess a true ultimate soldier who belongs to us." Nana stayed behind to take care of Bei Bei, but Ji Juechen, Jing Ziyan, and Nan Qiuqiu raced onto the competition stage. Ji Juechen carried Shusansha off, while Jing Ziyan and Nan Qiuqiu helped an exhausted and fatigued Wang Donge take care of Huo Yuhao, who was back in his wheelchair. "You guys are so fantastic." Nan Qiuqiu embraced Wang Donge and pecked her on her soft and tender lips. Wang Donge was a little taken aback, and her beautiful pale cheeks tinged with redness. "Qiuqiu," Wang Donge's voice sounded a little blaming and displeased. Nan Qiuqiu couldn't detect Wang Donge's embarrassment and shyness. She continued elatedly, "The Tang sect is the best. The Tang sect is the best. We won, we won. Ha ha, if only I had been able to fight, too." Jing Ziyan seemed a little despondent. "If only I had been born a few years earlier." Ji Juechen stared at Huo Yuhao solemnly and muttered, "What state were you in during that transformation? I want to try fighting against that." Huo Yuhao rolled his eyes and said, "You'll have your chance in the future. However, you have to make sure that you're stronger than Yang Feng before that. Are you feeling very good about yourselves?" An old and deep voice boomed angrily, interrupting them like a volcanic eruption. Everyone turned around to look. The scorpion tiger Doluo, Zhong Peng, was staring at them insidiously. There was only ferocity and savagery in his eyes. Among the Holy Ghost sect's participating members in this competition, the Skeleton King, Tang Dai, was the scorpion tiger Doluo's personal disciple. The purple golden butterfly dragon transformation had defeated and killed the bone dragon as well, and it didn't help that the Holy Ghost Church had put in so much effort to nurture this group of young evil soul masters. The Holy Ghost Church had sustained heavy losses even though they still had Tang Ya, and this blow was so heavy that the mysterious imperial tutor almost couldn't hold himself back, let alone Zhongpeng. So what if we're feeling good about ourselves? Newborn calves were not afraid of tigers, and Nan Xiuqiu had that classic personality. She rebuked Zhongpeng's ice-cold accusation, and she didn't show any weakness at all. Zhongpeng's eyes closed into slits as he nodded and said, "Good. Good, good. Let's go." He suppressed the impulse to explode as he spoke, and he took Tang Ya, the mysterious girl in black, and the reserve evil soul masters, and they left quickly. The gloomy and eerie atmosphere in the resting lounge vanished once they disappeared, and there was a very refreshing feeling in its place. The rainstorm was gone, and the thick dark clouds in the sky separated as enchanting sunlight peeked from between them and shone on the competition stage, and onto the audience in the resting area. The radiant golden color, and the unique warmth that only sunlight possessed put a charming smile on many people's faces. Wang Qiu'er walked over to Huo Yuhao and lowered her voice as she spoke. "I've returned what I owed you. We'll meet again in the finals." Huo Yuhao smiled and said, "Thank you, Qiu'er." Wang Qiu'er felt her heart skip a beat as she met his sincere gaze, but she swiftly turned around and waved as she led Shrek Academy's team away. Dai Huobin, Wu Feng, Zhu Lu and the others seemed a little lost and vacant when they passed Huo Yuhao, because they were clear that they had no chance of catching up with this fellow in a wheelchair, not even in the future. The rivalry and animosity between them seemed to disappear after today's match. Huo Yuhao's lips moved as he mouthed something to Wang Qiu'er soundlessly. Wang Qiu'er paused for a moment as she was walking forward, before she rapidly departed. Huo Yuhao shut his eyes. He was quite exhausted, but there was a smile at the corner of his mouth. The end of this round opened the curtains for another great battle. This was just the beginning. The Continental Elite Youth Soul Master Tournament was nearing its end as it reached this stage. The semifinals were over, and the Tang sect and Shrek Academy had successfully defeated their opponents to reach the finals. For some people, it didn't matter which team emerged victorious in the end. The fight that seemed like some kind of family infighting would take place the following day. Everyone returned to their respective rooms back at the hotel to rest, and Huo Yuhao and Wang Dong'er retired to their own room. There was no need to hide anything anymore, and the two of them placed their palms together as they channeled their Haodong power and regenerated their soul power. But there was something dark and shadowy riling up in Radiant City. Radiant City's Dinghu Main Street was located in a residential area lined with short houses near the western suburbs. It was called a main street, but it was just a small path that couldn't be considered wide or spacious. The western suburbs had always been the place where the citizens in the lowest strata of society lived. There were hardly any tall buildings or skyscrapers in the area, only large patches of short houses. There were enormous stone mountains further to the west, which formed the Sun Moon Mountain Range. There was a small restaurant on Dinghu Main Street. It couldn't have had much more than 1,000 feet of floor space. There were 4 or 5 tables laid out inside. This restaurant could not be considered splendid or magnificent. Describing it as simple and plain was already a compliment. This place served only the simplest meals. The sky had gone dark at this point, but this was Radiant City's busiest and most bustling time. This was especially true due to the exceptionally thrilling semifinals that everybody was talking about. Dinghu Main Street's little restaurant was broken down and decrepit, but every single seat was occupied, and there were even 2 extra tables set up near the entrance. This video will end here.